Is the sort of the analysis pretty similar to what a hedge fund manager would do in terms of alpha and beta? So basically, you have to set the risk you want, but you also need to say goodbye to some upside, even though you think the market can give you that upside, because so many people have compared shipping to stocks, basically, that is so volatile and it's so like fragile in terms of the how volatile it is. So do you think it's pretty similar, the decision you do as a shipping owner compared to maybe a stock picker, that it has to be like risk based and you need to calculate both alpha and stuff?
Yeah, I think actually an option trader is more applicable than stock trader because, usually you say shipping is about options with propellers. So yeah, certainly, when we think about stuff, we think about value at risk is something. So then you think, okay, let's say I have 10 ships now in the spot market. Our cash break even is 45. Let's say market is just terrible and you're making $35,000. Or if we're making $35,000 on the new ships, the old ships should be making zero or less, But then you think, okay, how long can it stay this poor? How much money do we have? So that kind of drives your kind of willingness to take risk and how you think about stuff. And so, having a lot of, and cash is of course one thing, and kind of optimizing your financing and your cash position to your business strategy and the risk you are taking. So yeah, I think it's a bit like being an option trader, and you have to be humble that don't think too linearly, so that don't think that this happened and this happened. It's like more like it's just random. So you have to think more in what you call a quantum theory rather than Isaac Newton's clockwork or universe of kind of gravity. So it's more think about probability, be humble that the market can be totally different with what people are thinking, but just be prepared for everything.
But if you can build that analogy a bit further, who's the central bank and who's the politicians in the shipping industry? Because they also affect the stock market or the option trading.
Of course, dollar is the currency of shipping. So, but we are in that sense naturally hedged because our assets are dollars, our debt is dollar, our income is dollar. The good thing with the strong dollar is that it becomes very cheap to operate from Oslo compared to some other places if the NOK is weak. But dollar interests is very important because if you look at our capital structure, I'm probably going ahead of myself, but I mentioned a cash break even of 45,000. So but our OPEX, operating expenses is like $15,000 per day. So that means 30,000 is capital. And that means that most of your costs are capital, and that's just to serve the debt for the debt. But so the people buying a stock, they also want a return. So maybe in order to give them a satisfactory return, you need to make 65,000. So your operating cost is 15, and then the capital is 50,000. So the cost of capital and interest rate are also very important. So of course we are looking a lot at what the Fed is doing and saying. But then, in the end, it's the economic growth and that is driving, demand for energy. And then for LNG in particular, you have also this other factor about decarbonization. Are people shutting down coal and switching to natural gas in order to reduce the CO2 emissions, but also reducing local pollutants? That is also another driver. So then you are talking more about politicians and the Paris Agreement and such.
You compared shipping with the stock market. Then the biggest question that it's very hard to answer is how do you separate luck and skill? Because you can be lucky in many years.
Okay.
You can't?
You can, okay. Without luck, it's extremely difficult to do, I think, extremely well. But it's also extremely difficult to do extremely well without skill. So it has to be a combination. I think being skillful, for example, I think if we had not seen the fact that technologically ships were changing and that with IMO 2020, older ships would become much less competitive. And when I'm talking about older ships, I mean ships within 2012, 2011. I'm not talking about 20-year-old ships. I'm talking about 80-year-old ships or 7-year-old ships. If we hadn't perceived that, which we perceive because we follow our business and we live it day to day, we would not have done what we did. But we were also lucky that, let's say, we were in a situation where we had a relatively small fleet back in the mid-2010s, which we sold, and we had the opportunity to renew the whole fleet effectively. Now, if we had 50 ships or 30 ships in our hands in 2015, 16, we wouldn't have the opportunity to create such a modern, efficient fleet. And that's luck. Because when we had fewer ships in 2015, it was not because we thought that IMO would come along in 2020 and change the fuel and everything else. And it was just that we had found opportunities to sell ships, and we had sold the fleet out without seeing the macro elements being so attractive as to go and order a lot of ships. Yeah.
But I feel also the best are very good at taking advantage of macro situations and making their own luck, right? I don't feel like...
Yeah.
During this period, did you have an interest for shipping? Because I feel there's some generational effects here that my generation isn't that much into shipping, but maybe you're in the age where it was natural at 18 years old to read the shipping analytics and stuff.
No, I don't think I was drawn to shipping at the age of 18, and really I started working in finance with a firm that was focused on shipping and energy. But it is a fascinating industry because it's on many levels, really. I mean, the world needs shipping to go around. If you take a more of a macro view, 95% of all goods in the world travel at the ship at some point. So it's really, it's part of the engine that makes the world go around. And it's also an industry with some fantastic opportunities to make good returns if you get it right. I mean, I think everyone knows the success of ship owners who've made it right, and maybe you hear less about the ones that got it wrong. But there's no doubt that that's it's an industry with great opportunities. And then I think it's one of the few industries still that has a strong level of personal relationships and contacts. You know, very large and dominant companies are controlled by, and I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about the really big shipping companies. They're controlled by individuals who are hands-on, dealing with the business day to day. And it's this combination of globally important industry that can have large swings, which can make people good returns if you get it right, and strong individuals, very different individuals with a hands-on approach to running the business.
Definitely. If we talk about the macro for just one more second, I think, am I biased for saying that Norway has a good position in the shipping industry, or is it just because we have some few Norwegian people that done extremely well? Or do you have countries like Portugal, etc., that should be positioned to be good in shipping that isn't good? Because which country has the best competence in shipping?
I mean, it depends, of course, which part, but I think Norway has had a very strong heritage in shipping, and it probably dates back to the age of whaling, if you were to find the beginning, maybe even the Viking area, if I think about it. But today, I think Norway is definitely a global hub for shipping, which makes it possible to establish and run shipping companies out of Norway. And you have everyone that goes into the ecosystem. There are good capabilities. There are good shipping lawyers. There are good financiers, both on the debt and equity side. There are good ship brokers, and there is good talent for building shipping companies. So it's in a way fascinating that you can start a company in Norway, you can work with the best advisors, and you can attract some of the best people globally to run that company.
How much it's oil related in terms of the shipping competence in Norway, or is it not paired at all? If you have the oil competence, is it natural synergies into shipping, or is it not?
I guess there are probably some synergies, but there are dominant companies in crude shipping in Norway. You have, of course, Fredriksen, controlled by the Frontline, controlled by John Fredriksen. You have DHT, which has a strong presence. You have Norwegian American Tankers with a strong presence. So some of the most foremost companies are in some way affiliated with Norway.
So is it correct to say that the success of the big ones are individually driven, and it's not really Norway? We're just lucky to have some people that have extremely big talents in shipping, and then we have the ripple effects into Norway as a whole with competence and hubs, etc.
I think behind the most successful companies, and I mentioned some of the good ones that have come out of Norway, there are strong individuals that have been good at managing risk, and I think you have to attribute a lot of that success to those individuals. But it's impossible to run any kind of company with one person alone. It requires a team of good people, and I think the good people that enable these businesses to be run out of Norway are hugely important.